The woman had a unique gift ever since she was a kid. She could see a glimpse of what was about to happen to other people. One day, a bride-to-be asked Annie to read her future. But in Annie's eyes, all she saw was the woman as a rotting, decaying corpse. Since the groom was her friend, Annie decided not to tell him the terrifying truth. 3 days later, Annie saw a newspaper report saying the bride, Jessica, had gone missing. Because Annie was well known around town for her accurate readings, Jessica's father showed up at her door, begging for help. Using her tarot cards, Annie saw Jessica underwater, trapped in chains, hanging lifelessly. So the police followed Annie's vision to track down the location, and just like she predicted, they pulled Jessica's body out of the river. The police quickly identified Donnie, a man who lived nearby, as the prime suspect. Not long after, a lawyer came to visit Annie. He told her the coroner had found traces of Donnie's skin under Jessica's fingernails, but the way the body was discovered was way too odd. And Annie had a messy history with Donnie. The lawyer warned her she might get dragged into the case, telling her to be ready for whatever came next. Soon, the trial started. A witness testified that he'd seen Donnie arguing with Jessica that night, and even saw them get into a physical fight. But Donnie's lawyer seized on how the body was found. The sheriff admitted they'd searched for days with no luck, so they'd followed Jessica's father's suggestion and turned to a local psychic for help. It was based on Annie's dreams that they'd found the crime scene. Hearing that, Donnie's lawyer shifted his focus straight to Annie. He held up his hand behind his back and asked, "How many fingers am I holding up?" trying to test if her powers were real. But Annie was stuck. She couldn't answer, because her gift only let her see what would happen in the future, not what was going on right at that moment. Plus, Annie had once told Donnie's wife that even though Donnie could be violent, he'd never commit murder. Now Donnie stood in court, accused of killing someone, and Annie's old words no longer lined up with the present reality. The lawyer's sharp, relentless questions left Annie tongue-tied, so the judge told her to leave the courtroom. Then Donnie finally told his side of the story. He said he'd known Jessica for years, and they'd had a secret physical relationship. When he found out she was getting married, he asked to meet up. Their conversation went south fast, and they ended up fighting. Those scratches on his arm, he said, were from that argument. Afterward, he'd driven Jessica back home. He admitted he was a lousy husband, but he swore up and down he hadn't killed her. That night, Annie got home to find her floor soaked with water. She heard a woman sobbing in the bathroom. Gathering up all her courage, she walked over and pushed the door open. Inside the tub, she saw Jessica sitting there, crying, clear as day. This vision of Jessica felt like a sign, and Annie suddenly realized, the real killer might be someone else entirely.